Hi y'all, and welcome back to KDQ's Astro News. So today I'm going to be talking about the new moon this time in the sign Gemini. And as you guys know, as usual, I like to talk about the individual stars, and the star we're going to be talking about today is Mrigasira. Mrigasira nakshatra, also known as Orion, and is located right at the Orion's Belt. And Orion in particular sits right in between Gemini and Taurus. So interestingly enough, the star Mrigasira, its Yogatara, is at 29 degrees Taurus. And actually this new moon, where the sun and moon are coming together in the same sign, is actually happening according to what I could see on Stellarium, which is what I like to use to check the stars, you know, instead of having a telescope, which I would love to have a telescope one day. It actually shows that this new moon is going to be at the very last degree of Taurus, which, as I said in my last video, is actually a critical point anyway, and talks about the mastery of a certain zodiac sign. Here with Mrigasira, Mrigasira is actually a cusp sign, and all of the Mars ruled nakshatras, which is Mrigasira, Chitra, and Dhanishta, are all halfway in the earth signs and halfway in the air signs. They're perfectly split between the two. And Mrigasira here is split in between Taurus and Gemini evenly, and its Yogatara, which is its exact calculation point for the particular star, is at 29 degrees Taurus. But everybody in both the Vedic community and the tropical community seem to be saying new moon in Gemini, so we're going to roll with it. And Mrigasira, like I said, is balanced between the two signs, so either way, it makes sense to talk about both of the themes of Gemini and Taurus. So we'll call it a new moon in Gemini, but in my heart, it is a new moon, a second new moon in Taurus. We have Mrigasira here, which is right in between Taurus and Gemini. And like I said, this is happening right in between the two, so there are elements of both these signs that are going to be woven into the star. So just as a quick little rundown first about Mrigasira. Mrigasira is known as the searching star, and its symbol is actually the deer's head. And even though it's yoni animal, because every star has its own animal, Mrigasira is actually the female serpent, the female snake, which is the counterpart to Rohini that I just talked about a little bit in the last video. Mrigasira in particular, with that deer's head association with that symbol, has a lot to do with deer, and like the energy of deer in particular, their forest association, their roaming nature. They're also quite skittish and vulnerable because they're prey animals. Things like that are definitely going to be coming up a lot. The deity of Mrigasira is actually Soma, or Chandra, which Chandra is the moon. It's actually the planet moon as the deity, which is actually a man, which is kind of interesting. Moon itself as a deity in Vedic astrology is like a male deity, and sometimes the star of Mrigasira is also represented by Soma, which Soma is like a moon nectar. It's a product of the moon that gives immortality, it gives bliss. It's this very mysterious substance that is sought after by mankind and, you know, godkind and demonkind alike. So there's going to be themes of that too that we're going to be talking about, things like longevity and immortality and the sweetness and bliss of life. The desire for Mrigasira is actually to be the lord of the plants and their Shakti power is to give fulfillment or joy. They're a soft type. They're also a Deva or angelic type. They are pursuing moksha, which is like salvation, liberation, to be released from suffering. They are ruled by Mars, and they're also farmer caste. This association with them being the farmer caste is kind of where I want to start today, because Mrigasira starts in Taurus, and Taurus is a very conservative, pastoral, tribal, small community zodiac sign. They are very traditional in every sense of the word, and they're very connected to nature. They're an earth sign. And so Mrigasira here is, like I said, farmer caste, and they also have that desire to be lord of the animals, as well as Soma, like their deity or what they're ruled by. This Soma, this element, this substance, is also something that can be concocted. It's created from an herb. There's different types of Soma in general, but it's created from an herb. And so this sign is also so associated with herbalism, gardening, anything that has to do with living and breathing and stewarding life in general. It's a very nature-based and earthy sign, even on the Gemini side, because Gemini has to do with things like community, connections, friendship, communication, even hobbies. And in particular here with Mrigasira being the very first part of Gemini, we see community that is familiar to us. Community like your family members, your siblings, your very immediate environment, your neighbors. And here I want to talk about the deer's head, and deer in particular are very family oriented. They travel together as a group. They're very sensitive and soft, and that theme is going to be coming up a lot, is themes of what you find familiar, what you find to be grounding, nourishing, and stabilizing. And with the Gemini part of it, you still get a very curious and social and active side to Mrigasira, but again, it's very much with people they're familiar with already. They're not so fond of strangers. They don't really like other cultures. They really want to mingle mostly with that which is familiar. So it's really important at this time to be thinking about that, to be thinking about where you stand in your community. What is your social role? Do you feel like you can be emotionally vulnerable with the people that are around you? This is something that we talked about in the last moon, like I said, with Anuradha being that star of friendship, with Rohini. Now here in Mrigasira, it's really solidifying and crystallizing. So it was really important, and still is, to really prune away relationships and connections that do not serve you. That way you can feel safe to be able to relax and to be completely yourself without having your guard up. Because yeah, deer also are very fickle, very finicky, afraid, they're very jumpy. And the emotions here in particular are so important, because not only is Mrigasira ruled by this moon substance, but also we have Jupiter and Venus are sitting in the sign of Cancer, which is also ruled by the moon. So that's why being emotionally supported right now is of utmost importance, because I will talk about Jupiter and Venus's influence a little bit more later, but primarily thinking in terms of where we are placing our emotions and how we are creating a nourishing space is going to be paramount right now. Because to be able to get the fruits of this era, because we are going into a nice, refreshing, complete new reset, a new golden era here for, all of humanity. It's in a global sense because we're all affected by the stars. But to be able to do that, we need a really solid foundation. And this foundation in this case is watery. It's emotional in nature. So again, with this lunar, seasonal, farmer cast, this is about the intelligence and wisdom that comes from the more natural side of things, that comes from wisdom, slow wisdom as well. I am obsessed with Farmer's Almanac. I really like gardening myself. And there is so much that you can learn from books, right? Especially when it comes to gardening. I've read so many books about flowers and roses. I'm a rosarian. I have Venus and Taurus, so I absolutely love plants and nature. But there is something completely different about going through the seasons and the cycles of life and watching how life interacts and grows and changes and ebbs and flows. There's a whole other type of wisdom that comes from that slow living, that sort of direct hands-on experience that you gain. And also with Mrigasira being ruled by the planet Mars, the nakshatra itself is ruled by Mars, you get this very direct knowledge and wisdom. Like I said, Mrigasira people, they are still very curious, they're super intelligent as well, but they want to engage with things that they can physically engage with immediately and directly, and including people. They want to be with people that they can engage with in the face-to-face. I'm not talking about like online communities back when we talked about Swati, these sort of ephemeral, unreal places. This is really not the case here with Mrigasira. Mrigasira is really in the present moment, in the real moment, with real, tangible, physical experiences. Like I said, even on the Gemini side, we're still familial in nature, like people that you see on a very regular basis. It is very important to go outside, go and touch grass, to go and be immersed in nature, because it can help to realign your mind, but also your physical body with, you know, whatever season you're in. Up here in upstate South Carolina, we're heading towards summertime, and so and it's very wet this year. I think it's El Nino, so it's very wet, it's very swampy, and there's a sort of like nostalgia in the air, probably from that Cancer energy, that lunar energy. The whole month of June in general is very lunar, and so is May, because of that Rohini. Rohini is also ruled by the moon. Mrigasira has moon influence, and then towards the end of the month we'll be moving towards Cancer and into July. So summertime already up here already has this really nostalgic energy to it, and so it's so important to go and smell those smells, and smell in particular, your senses are all ruled by the second house, and so those sort of things can activate memories, and they can help us to feel really comfortable as well. So immersing yourself in color and nature with the flowers can really sort of adjust your lizard brain, like a more deeper serpentine part of your brain, and can actually calm anxiety, which is so important right now. Like I said, deer are very fickle, they're very afraid, timid, easily spooked, and so really working on a deeper physical level to find comfort and solace is super important. This is really interesting as well. I don't normally talk about the birds, because actually every nakshatra also has a particular bird associated with it, as well as like a tree. They have their own element, and I don't normally talk about the birds, but in this case the bird for Mrigasira is actually the hen, the female, you know, chicken. So again, we have this sort of like farmland, pastoral, agricultural, and also very anxious and protective, motherly kind of an instinct that comes up here in Mrigasira. So I definitely wanted to mention the hen energy, because I just thought like this whole farmland, and I'm from the South, so I feel like this is all very nostalgic to me. Like that sort of old way of living is being very highlighted right now. Not to say that it's better than urban environments and urban city living, but it's just the focus right now. And if you do live in the city, this would be a really wonderful time to just go do something historical or old, or maybe go out to a place in nature that you really enjoy, like a local park or something like that. And it's so funny, like I said, the hen has like this motherly instinct. My mom is actually Mrigasira. My late father is also Mrigasira moon. My mom is Mrigasira sun. Her birthday is coming up, actually. Happy birthday, Mom. My dad was also Mrigasira, and of all the signs, of all the real people I know in real life, I feel like I know the most Mrigasira people. So that's kind of interesting to me. It's something that, again, like I said, has a sort of nostalgic presence to it, because they're so engaged with their local community, like I said. So I wouldn't be surprised if everybody kind of knows their own local Mrigasira, because they love to be in, like, even the more social Geminian side of Mrigasira are people that love to be at the local bar. Soma is also a substance. Things like brewing and fermenting, so associated with the sign, and that can be a trouble I'm going to mention later. But yeah, you'll always see your local Mrigashiran in their everyday locations that are like the deer. The deer like to go and travel the same exact paths every day. I was listening to the Pi team talk about this, and they were saying that deer have they travel as a family, and they have these familiar routes that are usually guided by consumption, by food, by eating, which is so Taurus. And so they follow these similar grazing patterns, and you can see that with Mrigasira natives as well, that they have like their favorite place to eat, their favorite foods, they do the same thing every day, and they're very busy and active because of that Mars, and that's a good thing, but it's more so in a tending sort of a way, of tending your own little environment. And speaking of your environment and your home and gardens, this would be a really amazing time if you've been thinking about starting a garden, even if it's just like a container garden. I live in an apartment right now, so we have to have a container garden, but also buying land, buying a new home, and making those adjustments to be able to have a place where you do feel more comfortable and that your nervous system doesn't feel so fried. I especially resonate with that. I feel like I'm in an environment that's way too dense, way too populated, and that every day flow of life, doing things like going to the grocery store, going for a walk to stay healthy, is really difficult for me. And I typically go and visit my hometown, which has literally 10 times less people in it, which is the place that I would love to go and buy a home and stay. So buying a home, buying land, starting a homestead or a farm, or even buying livestock, buying chickens, all those are very favorable right now. And like I said, the desire of Mrigasira is to be the lord of the plants. They are very interested in the flora. And so, yeah, even just buying a new plant for inside of your home or in your office, if that's what's available to you, could be really good. Or just visiting like a greenhouse or something like that as well, or a botanical garden. All of that can really help to really stabilize you and, like I said, soothe you, soothe any anxiety or nerves. And speaking of Taurus and this grazing pattern I talked about with the deer, the second house has to do with consumption and the things that we consume. And I really think that this is an important time to really manage that. This weekend, it's really important to really be aware of the things that you're putting in your body. Like I said, it's probably not the best time to indulge in substances. And if you think a lot of the times with substance abuse and addictions or any sort of avoidant behaviors, it's trying to fill a void where we do want connection, where we wish that we were having pleasure and fun, which is the Shakti power, the power to provide fulfillment and joy. We're trying to replicate that in this sort of toxic way. And yeah, Mrigasira is still the snake. And so it's important to really think of identifying these poisons in our life and try to find the antidote instead. Instead of just mindlessly eating or indulging in any sort of even social media, like I said, even on the Gemini side, you have to be really careful of the things that you consume, because in a way you are what you eat, you are what you consume, you become like those closest to you. I'm pretty sure that there's a phrase that talks about how you are like your closest 5 friends, and that could also relate to family and the people that you're surrounded with. So you really become what you surround yourself with and what you consume, and that includes the things that you follow, the things that you watch. It's very easy for you to just adjust and sort of flow with whatever is around you, and that can be really dangerous. And like I said, this is an anxious, flighty sign that is very paranoid, very suspicious, and rightfully so. It's a prey animal just like snakes are. It is in their best interest to be that way, and there's a part of all of us that has a sort of hypervigilance to us to always be aware of our surroundings, especially those of us who have experienced any type of trauma, which, I mean, after the past few years, I think we've all experienced some kind of trauma. And so it's easy to trigger and activate that, especially in the way, I think of the news, and this is not political. It doesn't matter what kind of news you listen to. It doesn't matter what kind of media. If it's charged, these people in media they have a financial incentive, and so they use tactics that are entertainment based, which includes conflict, which includes uncertainty, and these are the same things that you see with addictions. These techniques, if you think of clickbait or a cliffhanger, things that you would usually see in entertainment, these are typically used in media. And media in particular, like I said, it doesn't matter which side you land on. A lot of the times they focus on reinforcing our ideas about others, and so it has sort of a catch-22 effect, where you may think that you're getting the sort of worldly view and an expanded view of seeing what the other side thinks, but realistically it just kind of activates your own tribalism and reinforces your own echo chamber by activating this sort of weird fear and this competition, this uncertainty, like I said, about other people. And so it's more important right now for us to really focus on actually engaging with the people in our community. I know not everybody loves the community that they're born in, their family, the people that they are raised around. And like I said, if that really is something that deeply destabilizes you, that would be something to think about right now, possibly really making a serious decision to adjust that, to move and not just be avoidant, but to move to a place where you do align with the people and you do align with their values. Because the more that we have this sort of hatred and detachment and protectiveness around the people that we're most familiar with, the less healthy and nourished we are. We need flow. We need the juice and the sweetness of life to keep us going, or else life gets really hard and really dreadful fast. Despite this like really anxious side of the sign, they have the power to be able to create fulfillment, to bring joy, to have fun. And so I really find that this is the perfect antidote right now, is in the face of the poison of fear. Really try to find the antidote in fun, creating new routines and new habits that really fold enjoyment and pleasure and bliss into an every single day experience, and not something that you just save up for vacations, or that you just, you know, drink away. Like I said, this sign has a real big problem with substance abuse issues, and I really find that that comes from that lack of natural water flow, that natural emotional fulfillment and enjoyment and pleasure that is kind of like a shortcut and can be, yeah, it creates a dependency because it's not your actual friend, you know, it's not something that's sentient and can help you. So it's really important to create new routines to contradict any sort of negative patterns that we might have. And different ways to have fun, you know, everybody has their own hobbies, but any sort of hobby that is sort of nostalgic, that sort of speaks to your inner child, or it speaks to the craftsman in you, or anything that has community already built in. So joining a gardening club, or doing something that helps the environment, of course, if you're passionate about that. But any kind of herbalism, any potion making or perfumery, making natural perfumes. I have a friend who actually makes her own perfumes, and I use it every single day and I love it. Like I said, I have Venus and Taurus, so these are things that I love as well. But also things like weaving, crocheting, knitting, things that, like I said, use tools, are direct, are hands-on, very pastoral. It's very homesteady, so things like pickling and canning, fermenting, making vinegars, or making your own salad dressings, things like that are such a better use of your time rather than, you know, any type of consumption. Like I said, whether it's scrolling more on that Gemini side of things, or if it's like overeating and consuming on that Taurus side of things, if you feel that urge, which also usually comes from boredom, it can be really good to do something that actually takes up a lot of your time. Making jewelry is another great one, or painting, you know, I have my painting behind me as always. And so anything like that actually is a great use of that flow state, and like using up that time where you would otherwise be bored and tempted to do something that's not so healthy for you. And actually with the flora and this nature, this sort of woodland sign, they actually really remind me of the Fae. And the Fae are a part of Celtic mythology from the British Isles before Christianity. They believed in the Fae, and the Fae are neutral. They're not necessarily always positive, but they're fun, they're playful, they're a little bit trickstery if they're not on your side. They are associated with the woods and nature, and some of the boons that you can gain from interacting with the Fae, if you believe in it. It's up to you what you believe in, but this is just, you know, if you want to think of it as a story or a myth, that's fine too. And the Fae, the boons that you can gain from them are things like good health, good harvest. They love plants, they love herbs. Like I said, herbs are really good for right now. But ironically, like I said, they're not always so positive, and they are very quick to leave and punish people as well. And in particular, the Fae hate iron. They hate all things iron. And iron in Vedic astrology is associated with the planet Saturn. Saturn's metal is iron, and Saturn is restrictions, duty. It's also things like society and like the structural hierarchy of things. And it's very work-oriented and stuffy, and the Fae are not a fan. So things like being stuck in our houses with their iron walls, or like I said, urban city environments, cityscapes, our phones, these screens, anything like that is not very Fae friendly. And yeah, so this would be a really great time to kind of indulge in your own inner fairy or inner elf. And I really feel like Mrigasira people kind of look elven sometimes, but it's really good to sort of feed that inner elf, that inner fairy, or just your inner child in general by maybe just taking some time off this weekend from being on the screens, from being so involved and engaged with the social movings and these, like I said, these sort of intangible conceptual things are not as favorable right now. It's a lot better to get personal and take some time to go touch grass. And earth energy is very stabilizing and very nourishing. It's all about permanence and longevity. And I talked about that with the last new moon in Taurus, because this seems to be another new moon in Taurus, according to my calculations. And this is when I wanted to bring back the conversation about Soma, this strange moon nectar, this sweet bliss of life. And I mentioned Soma a little bit under Ashwini, because Ashwini is not from this world, in the Vedic lore, and they wanted to gain that immortality. They wanted the thing that makes things last forever, and that's what the Soma is for. According to the Vedic lore, the deities and the gods, they drink Soma to keep themselves alive forever, basically. And what I found interesting about this is that it's something that is restorative in nature, that it's very flowing, and it's about preservation, like I said, with that fermentation and brewing and things like that. If you think of alcohol, it pretty much lasts forever. That's a big reason why, the sailors and stuff would bring alcohol on the ships, is not just to have a good time, but it has calories in it. And unfortunately, if all else fails, you do have alcohol that you can survive off of, because it's eternal and it literally will last forever. It only gets better with age, and more valuable with age at that, which is all very Taurus as well. It started to get me thinking about how this earth energy and real longevity is not just about being fixed and rigid and against the times. And it kind of reminds me of the way that people would see a conservative person here in the United States as someone rigid, someone who's stuck in their ways. But if you think of a farmer and you think of a real agricultural rural person, the point is not to stay fixed. The point is to be at least flowing and adaptable enough to be able to go with the flow and tides of life, because life is always changing, and it's about the wisdom of knowing the change before they get there, and being able to constantly be in alignment with the earth, with Mother Earth and her own cycles. And the more that we can go outside and literally be immersed in nature, it creates less of a resistance for our bodies. And the opposite is true as well. The more that we close ourselves off in these boxes, literally in our homes, in our cars, in our offices, but also even just mentally caging ourselves in these boxes, it creates a huge issue for us. It creates things like Alzheimer's and diseases, because we're suffocating and blocking off the natural flow of life that is, yes, slow, like the seasons are slow, earth energy is slow, but it is still living, it's still receptive, it's still flowing, just in a slower rate. And it should be something that we are adapting with and not resisting and becoming rigid and crusty and because if you're just like a solid board in the ground, like, you're just going to get knocked over by the elements, whether it's wind or fire or water. You're just going to get destroyed. So you have to be able to bend and adjust in alignment with the natural cycles of life. And this rigidity reminds me as well, I wanted to talk a little bit about the other planets, and Saturn and Mars right now are actually in a very interesting position. Saturn, this rigid thing that the fairies don't like, is actually in the water sign Revati, which Revati is at the very end of Pisces. It's the 27th nakshatra, so it's the very final sign, the very final portion of the very final sign. And Mars right now, the lesser malefic, is actually, it's in its own sign in Aries, which is the first sign. And what I also find interesting right now is that Mars is in Bharani, which is the elephant yoni, and Revati is also the elephant yoni. So these signs are actually counterparts to each other. And I find this particularly interesting right now because I keep talking about how this is a new era, this is a new time, and I really think this beginning and ending is being shown here with Saturn being in the very final sign and Mars being in the very beginning sign. The malefics here are really sort of truly closing the end of a cycle, and this is a long time coming. So this is not just a small year-long cycle. I'm talking 10, 12, multiple years, like long time, like really long time things are being closed up. And this also reminds me too, with Saturn here in the slow old sign of Pisces, kind of reminds me of the coffin card. I'll have to look it up. I think the Norman has the coffin card and the scythe card, and they are very similar to the death card, but the coffin has this very slow death, this slow ending. And Bharani here, Mars and Aries in the sign Bharani, reminds me of a very sharp, quick ending. And it reminds me, I think it's the scythe. I'm not as familiar with the Lenormand. I'll have to look it up and post a picture, post it in the description. Anyway, both of these signs have to do with endings as well, because the deity for Revati is actually Pushan, who is the shepherd of the dead. He's the ferryman, basically, of the dead over the river Styx. And this river is taking you to the Lord of Bharani, which is Yama, who is the judge of the dead. So these two stars, like I said, they're yoni consorts to each other, but these two stars have everything to do with endings. And actually also the symbol for Bharani, this Mars placement, and Mrigasira is also ruled by Mars, like I said, so really showing those endings. Like if it didn't end slowly with the coffin card, it will end quickly as well, because things have to end for this new beginning. And Bharani is the yoni, it's the womb, so it's always so connected. These endings always are for a new beginning. If you're aware that an ending is coming, it's really important to know what it is that you want to grow. Know what it is that you would prefer to start instead. And because these things are inevitable, things have to change. And I'm sure a lot of us have a lot of negative things that we've carried on from the past few years, or possibly our entire lives, that we just wish we could be free from. And so it's nothing to fear. Endings don't have to be a negative thing, because there's plenty of things that we wish could end, like isolation, for example, or addictions. There's plenty of things that you wish you could just live a new life in a new way that's in more alignment, and this is a perfect opportunity to do so. Meanwhile, while the malefics are here clearing things out and finally finishing up every last thing that no longer serves, we also have the benefic signs. Jupiter and Venus are right together in a conjunction at the very beginning of the sign Cancer in the star Punarvasu, which Punarvasu is also known as the return of the light, the return of the good times, and it's symbolized by a home. So once again, like I said, buying a house is really awesome right now, but also just thinking again of your family, the people who are closest to you, your emotions. Where do you feel safe? This is what's being created for us. This is where the boons and the blessings are coming from, is in the emotional sense. I know in this day and age, it's so easy to think that like money is power, or fame, like everybody wants to be on social media. Who would want that? But anyway, everybody has these sort of like fiery or earthy material desires, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that we have lived through a time of such isolation and such conflict and separation with people, and it's so toxic and tiring, and sometimes it's hard to remember how much that is truly the foundation of life. And with the soma and immortality, the thing that really lasts, the thing that you can actually take with you beyond this physical body, beyond time, is your wisdom, which has a lot to do with these water signs and the things that we've gained and learned, and your connections, the love between you and the other souls of this planet. Those things, if you believe in life after death, I know there's probably some atheists watching and everything, but that's just not my jam. I am definitely someone who believes in the afterlife, and I've had very many direct connections with the afterlife, and it's not stuff, it's not things that go to the other side. It's not your money, it's not even your fame or the things that the name that you created for this physical vessel that you reside in. It's the love, it's the connection with people, it's the wisdom, it's what you've learned, it's the storyline, it's those juicy, watery soma things that you created and experienced that too carry on with you into the afterlife. And it's just a healthier way to live. Like the roots, the earth, these earthy things, even if you have a home, even if you have all the stuff in the world, it's always better with friends and family. It's always better with a lover. And I really do believe that a part of this new era that we're going into is going to have huge elements of that, of reconnection, of having a more analog life, of really giving back to the people that you see here and now, and not in this disembodied, anxiety creating way. And yeah, I know that I have plenty of goals that I want to do here in the physical world, even though I'm talking to you through a screen. There is just something special about real life. And yeah, I really think that the star is all about that, is about the remembrance of our ancient tribal ways of connecting and of playing your own social role and being, yeah, connected to the ones that you love. So I think that is everything that I have to say about Mrigasira, this new moon in Gemini, or another new moon in Taurus. But either way, I think that's everything I had to say. Hopefully I didn't get too sappy at the end there. But yeah, I hope you guys are having a good time and enjoy your weekend. I love you all. Bye.